All right, welcome to today's explainer. As a developmental economist, there is one absolutely fundamental distinction I constantly see getting glossed over in the headlines, and honestly, even in major policy debates. We're talking about the difference between economic growth and economic development. Today, we're putting these two concepts in a head-to-head matchup, because as you'll see, treating them like they're just interchangeable, yeah, that's a massive mistake.
Okay, let's just dive right into this, shall we? Here's the big question. Does a richer country automatically mean a better life? It's a super popular misconception, right? That national wealth just automatically equals societal progress. We hear all the time about a country's income rising, and we just kind of naturally assume everything is getting better for everyone. But, and this is a big but, as we look at the precise definitions we actually use in this field, just having more money in the national bank account absolutely does not guarantee a better quality of life for the people living there.
So let's start by setting our baseline. Economic growth is defined, very simply, as an increase in the real national income of a country. That's it. It is highly specific. When we talk about growth, we are strictly talking about the aggregate monetary value of goods and services. It's an analytical, totally numbers-based reality. The income goes up, boom, the economy has grown. End of story.
But now let's bring our second contender into the ring. Economic development is economic growth plus progressive changes in the variables that actually determine the well-being of everyday people. Think about critical human factors here. We're talking education, we're talking health. Development essentially takes that baseline of economic growth, that extra money, and builds upon it to actually tangibly improve the human condition. It's the whole package. Now, when we look at the actual scope of these two, the contrast is honestly pretty stark. Growth? It's narrow, it's quantitative, it's strictly a numbers game, essentially just counting up the national treasury. Development, on the flip side, is way broader, and it's qualitative. It paints a much larger, much more colorful picture of a society. It asks not just, hey, how much money do we have, but more importantly, how good is the life we're actually living with that money?
And this brilliantly illustrates their dimensionality. Economic growth is what we call a unidimensional concept. It just looks straight ahead at one single metric, which is income. Total tunnel vision. Economic development, however, is multidimensional. It requires us to look at the whole giant puzzle all at once. The schools, the hospitals, the infrastructure, human rights, the whole shebang. It's assessing the entire societal ecosystem, not just one isolated piece of the pie. Because of this multidimensional nature, you'll see these concepts behave very differently out there in the real world. Economic growth is spontaneous, and it's reversible. A country can experience a sudden massive boom in income and just as easily hit a recession where all that growth completely reverses. Economic development, though, that is deliberate and it's irreversible. Once you put in the hard work to build a robust education system or, say, eradicate a disease, you permanently upgrade the very foundation of that society. So the crucial point is figuring out how they actually depend on one another. First off, economic growth is entirely possible without economic development. A country can totally generate massive wealth at the top without ever improving its schools or hospitals. But, and pay attention to this, the reverse is literally impossible. Economic development cannot happen without economic growth acting as its engine, its funding mechanism. You can have money without progress, for sure, but you absolutely cannot fund massive societal progress without the actual money to pay for it.
Let's move along and see how economists actually measure this stuff out in the wild. For economic growth, the metrics are pretty much exactly what you'd expect. National income and per capita income, just checking the receipts. But to measure development, the scorecard completely shifts. We're looking at agricultural productivity, industrial productivity, and the overarching quality of human life. It's basically the difference between checking your bank statement and going to the doctor for a full-body health and capability checkup.
Which brings us to our final and honestly most critical question. Is your country merely growing, or is it truly developing? Next time you scroll past a headline celebrating a massive surge in GDP, I want you to remember this distinction. Ask yourself if that wealth is just a unidimensional number on a page, or if it's actually being deliberately used to fuel real, qualitative changes in human well-being. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. And hey, keep asking the right questions.